Hello and welcome back. Eddie Brodasevich, George Stoy here from the SoonerScoop.com studios on Campus Quarter. Josh McCuistion back in Houston Scoop HQ. And another week, another recruiting report. Josh, we've already done the Game Day Rewind, which you can watch here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel. Not much to clean up there in terms of what Oklahoma isn't offensively right now. But you did get out and you saw somebody that maybe could provide a little bit of hope for Oklahoma fans here moving forward with offensive tackle commitment, Ryan Fodje. And you turn on the tape, a lot to like when you're talking about the Bridgeland product.
Yeah, this is a guy, I actually went and talked to Ryan before the game, went and met with him, and he comes out of the building and you're like, crap, he's put on 20, 30 pounds since the last time I saw him, but it's not bad. I mean, you can see him here in the clips. Like, he looks like you want him to look. Big, long-armed guy. I would say he's maybe even grown a little bit, probably a little north of 6'5", into that 6'6" range, probably 285, 290 right now. Like I said, carrying it really well. Again, you guys know I've been a huge fan of this guy since I saw him really at camp last summer, but then having to watch some of his early junior tape, he just keeps getting better and is, to my eyes, probably one of the most natural pass pro guys I've seen. Like, again, he was playing a bad team. I know people look at this and be like, well, it doesn't matter. He's not any good. When you can move like that and you're as long as he is, it does not really matter. Just look how easy he slides. Like, that's, he's got natural knee bend. He's not even setting his weight down yet. Like, he doesn't even know all the little mechanisms, but he is just so natural in his movement. I just think he has elite potential.
I was going to say, Josh, one of the first things that I noticed when you sent back the highlights on Thursday night that you went and saw Bridgeland, that it was, God, what a night zero, little zero had on him, having to go up against Ryan Fodje. But second of all, and more seriously, his footwork is incredible for a offensive lineman, for a high school football offensive tackle. He looks like he moves a little bit better than maybe even some of the guys they have in Norman currently.
Yeah, again, and it is, I mean, it's not that he is a guy that hasn't played a lot of ball. Like, he grew up playing and everything, but when you saw him as a junior, he was like 255, 260. So, I feel like he's one of those guys where he had that ability to grow into it, like let himself fill out, let himself get bigger, stronger, all those things. But he worked on the athletic side of it, where I'm going to move my feet properly. I'm going to bend at the knee. I'm going to be straight back. Like, he just has a lot of the technical things you're looking for. And when you add in all his physical attributes and how big he is and how strong he is, again, I'm not sure there are many offensive tackles in the country that have his upside. Like, his projection is through the roof if he can put it all together. Now, if you wanted to say, okay, Josh, what does he need to improve on? I'd like to see him finish a little bit more. I'd like to see him be a little more violent with his hands, that kind of stuff. But again, I feel like that is something you can learn. Maybe, I think the really nasty guys, it's just in their bones. But you can learn to be good enough in that area. I can't make you athletic and 320 pounds. That's something you have or you don't have. And Ryan has it like few guys in the country have it.
Josh, two questions for you. Is he a right or left tackle? I know he's playing right there in the video, but could you see him playing either one? And then number two, any comps you have for him? Any guys that you think he plays like?
Well, I would say, to me, when you have a guy that is that gifted, that is that natural, I want to stick him on the left side every time. Now, we've got to see, because there's so often people just think, oh, you just move them over to the left. And it doesn't work. They're not as good there. It doesn't feel natural to them because everything is in reverse. But I would start in there and see where it goes. I think that's more natural. And especially when you say, okay, and the other guy's Michael Fasusi. Okay, fine. Michael Fasusi has some nasty on him. He'll finish. He'll get after your ass a little bit. I think that is more inherent to him, and it makes more sense to me as a right tackle. Now, you ever listen to anything Bill's ever said when he talks about this stuff? He doesn't care. Left tackle, right tackle, he thinks it's pretty interchangeable. It's more about where the player's comfortable, what makes the unit better kind of thing. So, again, I don't know that it'll matter, but to me, and when you look at it from a traditional sense, I would have Fodje start at left and Fasusi at right, which is funny because, like you said, Fodje plays right for Bridgeland and Fasusi plays left for Louisville. So we'll have to see how that all works out. As far as a comp, I'm terrible at this game. And B, I don't know that there's one that screams out at me. Like there's no one that's just like, oh, that's who that is. From a body type at the same age, and again, I get into these comparisons, these things that get in my head, and I hate them. He looks like Trent Williams. Like that's what it looks like. About 6'5 plus, about 300 and something pounds. Gonna change his body. Probably not as big and strong, as powerful as he needs to be. Now, he and Trent's games couldn't be more different when we all know Trent is one of the nastiest guys that you'll ever want to come across. So it's a little different in how they have success, but the body types are similar. But as far as a true player comp, I'd have to think about that, but I don't have one that just screams out to me just watching him go.
It might be 71. It might be 70. The 71 thing again too. What were you saying?
Trent Williams was on the sideline at the game.
I was gonna say he was on the sidelines Saturday. And I looked over there at one point, and he's still one of those guys that you see every once in a while. It's just like, my God, that is one of the largest humans I've ever come across.
And he just looks mean. Looks mean.
Trent Williams. All-timer. You did talk to Ryan Fodje, as you said. You can see that entire interview on SoonerScoop.com's editorial page. Just real quick summary-wise, everything's good with Oklahoma. Maybe this conversation changes here in how we'll see how the offensive staff does at the end of the season. But for now, everything sounds very good with him and Bill Beatembo.
Yeah, it feels very comfortable. Like when I asked him, like, what is the entire offensive line group? And it just sounds like a group that is very much together. They all believe in really playing together, what the offensive line can be. They know about the guys in front of them and how that's kind of an interior heavy group. And they've got a lot of, big outside type guys. So I think that is, I don't get anything from Ryan Fodje that tells me he's concerned. Now, with what we talked about on the Game Day Rewind, like all the things that can happen, that's something we can't foresee yet. Like I don't want to get into nothing would ever change this because there's too many variables as we're looking at things right now. But as the status quo goes, this sounds like a guy that's very much in lockstep with Oklahoma, and I don't really get the impression he's even talking to many other programs.
No doubt. From Houston, we will go all the way up to Washington, D.C. Trent Wilson, the defensive tackle commitment, continues to have an incredible season for Dr. Henry Wise High School, and we saw that yet again on Friday night. 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks on the day, and a 61-0 victory over Duval. Another dominant, thoroughly dominant performance from Trent Wilson, the Oklahoma defensive tackle commit, Josh.
Guys, we've talked about this before, but he is the type of guy you're looking for on the interior because not only is he big and strong and can defend the run like you're going to want, but he can create pressure up the middle. His quickness, his arms, again, like right here, this is one of his 2 sacks on the day. He just walks the guard back into the quarterback here. Now, I want to be clear. They won, as you said, Eddie, they won 61-0 over Duval. This is not a good football team they're beating, but for a defensive lineman, I don't really care who you're playing. To have 5 tackles for loss, like you're just living in the backfield because I can't imagine how many plays you didn't make. Like it's not just like, oh, you got those 5 and the rest of the time you didn't do anything. Like I don't think that's remotely possible because Trent strikes me a little like Grayson Halton in that like when he's on the field, you notice him because they just has a way of getting in the backfield, causing disruptions. Again, I like Trent Wilson a lot. I think he makes a lot of sense in this scheme of what Oklahoma wants to do because when Oklahoma goes into these 3 down fronts, he's a guy that can go and line up in that, in that 4 gap or that 4-eye look or whatever they want to do. And all of a sudden he's still dangerous. Like he still is capable of getting to the quarterback where now you have a guy like Dominic Williams who he's not going to scare you as a pass rusher from that point on the field. So again, I like Trent Wilson a lot. He's obviously their lone defensive tackle at commitment at this point. And if you're going to have just one of the 3 that they had, he's probably the one I would choose because I just think he has the most upside and the most ability to really impact an offense.
Josh, is he somebody? I mean, we're seeing it this year with Jaden Jackson. I know that's a very unique circumstance for a true freshman defensive tackle to be playing as much as Jaden is, but is he somebody that could find his way onto the field? I mean, you look at that defensive tackle room. They're going to lose DJ Terry. I think they're going to lose Dominic Williams. We'll see about a Grayson Halton if he'll stick around for a final season. Obviously, you have Jaden Jackson and David Stone, but is he somebody that you could convince yourself that maybe he works his way into the rotation, or is he more of a guy, he needs a couple years?
I think he absolutely could be part of that rotation. Now, I don't think he is as advanced and is, kind of forged by all the work Jaden Jackson did being at a place like IMG. Like, he hasn't faced that level of competition consistently. But Wise is a good program, put a lot of good players out. I could absolutely see him being a guy that has a role. Again, and it might be kind of situational, kind of like what they did with Grayson Halton last year, where they bring him on in pass rushing situations and they use him as he and Halton are your inside pass rushers, or, he and Stone, whatever it may be. But I think that's a possibility, because this is a guy, you look at him, like, the strength is there, the power is there. He's going to get overmatched at times, but I don't think it's as big a hill to jump for him as some guys I see. And clearly, Oklahoma on the defensive line is willing to play young guys if they're ready to go.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We'll get with another Oklahoma defender, but first let us tell you about the official custom clothier of OU football, William and Lauren. Every outfit your favorite OU player. If I could read, this is going real well. Your favorite OU player in custom suits that boost their confidence off the field to match their confidence on the field. Their perfectly tailored clothing ensures every Sooner stands out in comfort and style at prices that make luxury accessible. Visit William & Lauren in Oklahoma City or online at williamandlauren.com. That is williamandlauren.com. Dress like a champion and make your style as legendary as OU football. Saw them getting off the bus, coming into the stadium on Saturday into the Cotton Bowl. Everything was very cheery as they walked in. We did not know what was about to come. Dame Stutzman with the nice horns down necklace looked good, played good. Certainly couldn't say that for his offensive counterparts.
That is a
look. With a great look, great belt buckle as well. All of these suits. Special thank you to William and Lauren. Yeah, right there. It's perfect.
That's sharp.
It's a really good look.
I like Jaron.
Jaron actually played a little bit on Saturday as well.
He didn't play bad either.
No, not at all. Kobe McKenzie getting off the bus. Our Mason Thomas. Good looks all the way around. Special shout out to our friends over at William and Lauren. You can visit them in Oklahoma City or just online at williamandlauren.com. All right, let's get into Courtland Guillory, another really successful Friday night, even though his team lost 24-21 to Klein Oak. Josh, it was another good performance, though, for Courtland Guillory, the Oklahoma defensive back commitment, on both sides of the ball, might I add.
Yeah, the thing that, Klein Oak has always been pretty good defensively. I feel like they've always got a few athletes, not necessarily like Courtland, but always guys that have success. And then they've just said, okay, we're going to put him as a Wildcat quarterback, and he just keeps making crazy plays. I think I know he had at least 3 touchdowns in this game, and maybe there was a 4th, but only 1 counted. So clearly there were some penalties. Something got called back. But he was, again, like, you just see this, and you think about a corner with his little quick change of direction here where he's sticking his foot in the ground and planning. That's a corner. Like, that's what you're looking for. And he's just sticking in again. And, okay, boom. And now it's just outrunning people to the end zone. Like, and you see how long he is compared to all those other kids. He's so big and long-legged. He eats up yardage. I don't know that there is an Oklahoma player that I think has done more for how people see him, what the perception of him as a player is, than Courtland Guillory. I think what is he? Yeah. Oh, he just caps that guy off. I mean, and again, like, you see, this isn't a one-off. This isn't like, oh, this guy got hung up. Courtland Guillory, I say this is with as much reverence as I can. There's some Brandon Everidge in there. Like, he comes in and you notice it. Like, when he hits into a pile, bodies start flying out in every direction. He really kind of has that impact.
Really impressive stuff. Thought he had a really good game. needed to highlight him. One other guy that we will highlight here before we get into a little bit of a bigger conversation in terms of what Oklahoma's doing in the recruiting world. Caleb Burns made a visit to Oregon over the weekend. Obviously, Eugene was popping on Saturday night. The win over Ohio State in the final seconds. Dan Lanning, obviously. I think everybody has seen the video of him and his celebration on the field. We now come out of that visit, Josh, and he was a guy that Oklahoma had offered a couple weeks ago. Felt pretty good about his situation. Steve Wiltfong, our coworker with On3, has put in an RPM for Oregon and Caleb Burns' services. What do you make of just his visit to Eugene and an expected upcoming trip to Norman here in the coming weeks? How do you see this kind of playing out for the services of the current Baylor commit?
Yeah, Caleb's a guy I actually saw about 12 hours before his flight. After I saw Ryan Fodje, I'd made a trip over to, a little farther south in Houston to go see Caleb. I got there at halftime. He'd already, they were already up like 35-0 on a bad opponent. And so I didn't get to watch him play, but he and I had a chance to talk kind of just before kind of during the game. He was kind of just hanging out in his shoulder pads, that kind of stuff. And he was definitely excited about it. And I talked to him a little bit since then. Obviously Steve has got an interview up. He really had a chance to talk with Caleb. My impression was that there wasn't much of a way that he wasn't going to take this trip to Oklahoma that he's got scheduled for this weekend, which is just as unofficial. We've talked about it before. He wants to take his official for the Alabama game later in the year. Now, I can't think of two teams who had more diametrically different weekends than Oregon, who beats Ohio State in one of the games of the year, and Oklahoma goes out and just absolutely gets pounded by their rival. I don't know what that does. I won't say that I have a read on that. Again, when Steve puts in a prediction, it's usually pretty meaningful. Obviously, I've already had one in. I know, Oklahoma was in there early, had really been talking to him for a while. It's going to be interesting to see. To me, it's all about this weekend. If he comes up for a visit, okay, game on. Let's see what happens. If he doesn't, I think that's pretty telling as well. So, again, I felt really good about this a week ago. I felt good about it when I spoke to him on Thursday night. But you have a great visit like that. Oregon gets a historic win for their program. Like all those things, that's a lot to fight against. And we know, it's not like OU's going to beat Oregon in the NIL game. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in play. So we'll have to see what comes of it. But to me, if I'm Oklahoma, it's just about get him to campus for the South Carolina visit. And again, that may be bad too. It may be like I was in Oregon last week watching the Ohio State game, and now I'm in Norman watching this South Carolina game, and whatever may come out of that situation, you're making that comparison. Whether he wants to or not, it's going to happen. So,
Right.
Again, if you're Oklahoma, it's hard. I mean, you've got to find some momentum right now because recruiting you are as good as what you're doing on the field during the season. And right now, obviously, it's not great for Oklahoma.
If you want a full recap of all the Oklahoma commits, you can check out the Future Sooners, which, Josh, you put out every Sunday night, just reviewing every guy that's committed and kind of what they were up to over the course of the weekend. You can check that out on SoonerScoop.com. And that kind of leads us into another uncomfortable subject that we're going to have to talk about. And when you come off of a loss like you did on Saturday at the Cotton Bowl at 34-3, just basically dismantling of the program, I think it's just only commonplace for a lot of people to start wondering, are they going to be able to hold on to everybody that is in the 2025 class? Just let's start here. Any rumblings out there of maybe you need to keep an eye on some guys here as we get into some of the coming weeks and possibly some struggles that Oklahoma's going to have on the field?
So far, you really aren't hearing too much that you're like, okay, that's a new concern. Obviously, we've watched Cortez Mills. We've seen some of those. So, the guys that you'd heard things about before, okay, those guys, Nebraska's going to be calling Cortez Mills. Like, you sure? You want to think about this some? You want to come, play with Dylan Raiola, instead of whatever Oklahoma's going to be doing at quarterback going forward? I get that. I mean, I think that's a pitch that can work. So, there's no one that immediately jumps out to me as a concern. I think defensively, obviously, most of those guys were like, yeah, defense looks great. Those guys are going to go off the NFL, and I'll be the next group, and that all works for them. Now, just some guys that are from distance, like Elijah Thomas. I'm not worried about Elijah Thomas. He's wanted to go to Oklahoma most of his life. Like that he's going to be locked in at receiver. Like that all makes sense. To me, it's about doing the best you can to keep this offensive line class together, keep as much as that receiver group together, and whatever else you can get done is whatever else you can get done. I mean, I to me, that's where all my resources, that's where my time, that's where if I'm having, there's 10 recruits that Brent Venables has time to call in a week or a couple of days. Those are the guys he's calling. Like that's where my focus is, because that's what you've got to get right. That's what you've got to fix. And those are your best talents in this offensive class. And I think the defensive class, if you can give them something to believe in on the other side of the ball, they're going to be fine.
I think it's really interesting because, we talked about on the Game Day Rewind, if they are to let go of Seth Luttrell and Joe John Finley, which I think are the two guys that at this point you would think they'd let go of. Let's say they keep the rest of the staff. You look at that recruiting class, and I'm not saying the other guys, maybe receivers, want to play for Seth Luttrell. I don't know why, but I think that I would look at it and say, well, you might just lose Kevin Sperry at quarterback, who I think we all would be like, okay, you can deal with that. Maybe you could add somebody late in that class. You could go get a portal guy, whatever it be. We'll see what happens at quarterback. And then maybe Trenae Washington. But even Trenae Washington, Josh, I mean, he's Carl Albert kid from Oklahoma City. Like, I think you could still probably hold on to him depending on who you hire. So I look at it as, it could fall apart easily, like especially if you end up, losing a Bill Bedenbaugh or Emmett Jones.
There's one group on the offensive side of the ball that you really can't lose.
Yes.
And that's that offensive line group. That is Ryan Fodje.
I would say,
Michael Fasusi.
I think it's offensive line, and Josh said it too. The wide receiver group as well. It's number two, because you look at what they're losing at wide receiver, what they may or may not have coming back next year. There's a good chance that a couple of those guys are going to need to play like right away. And so you hope, and I think it's a pretty damn good wide receiver group that they're bringing in. When you talk about Elijah Thomas and possibly Cortez Mills and all these guys, like they could play right away. So offensive line's number one, but right there, number two is wide receiver.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. And even within that wide receiver group, if you said, okay, we got to make some tough decisions. Again, if you're talking about time allotment, NIL allotment, whatever it may be, Emmanuel Choice, Cortez Mills, and Elijah Thomas, those guys are getting the lion's share of my attention. Those are the guys. You've got to keep those guys. They bring something outside. They're big, physical outside receivers, which you look at this previous class, some smaller guys, the KJ Daniels, the Zion Raggins, like you look through that list, and it's a little bit of a different group. I think you need some outside guys. You need some perimeter guys. And frankly, it's easier to go find a slot guy in the portal. Like you can find a slot receiver that can help you and that can play at a high level in the portal. There's bunches of them. It's very different than offensive tackle or even a big perimeter receiver, because there weren't many of those in last year's portal. So I think those are the guys you focus on. That's what you want to do. But again, you start getting into staff changes and how wide that spreads. There's certain things that are just going to be beyond your control.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions, obviously, about what Oklahoma's going to do as a program on the offensive side of the football here moving forward, and then obviously how that all affects recruiting moving forward. I think that right now everything seems to be okay on that side, but who knows? You start losing some guys, and all of a sudden that ball gets rolling down the hill.
Yeah.
That I think none of us want to have to be able to. Be forced into kind of having to talk about it.
It's just so hard right now. I mean, we're going to have to talk about it probably every week now moving forward
100%.
With the recruiting report, but it's so hard because I said in the Game Day Rewind, if you go hire out a new offensive coordinator and they want to bring their new offensive line coach, and you're probably going to have a really tough time holding on to this group. Now, if they come in and they say, hey, we want to keep Bill, then you could probably hold on to these guys, because a lot of these guys, they want to come play for Bill, right? So it's a really tough thing to project right now, but it's certainly something that I think we have to keep our eyes on as this, S show continues throughout the season.
Most certainly. It's going to be interesting. Ryan Fodje does look really good, though. I'm glad.
That's awesome.
I'm glad that they have him in the fold right now because they certainly need help on the offensive line.
They're
There's
kind of
no
like
doubt about
that offensive line class and the wide receiver class, I would say, is kind of the light at the end of the tunnel right now, and that thing could shut real quick.
Yeah, that's kind of the changing of the times right now in the world of college football. So we'll be keeping an eye on it. Josh, we appreciate you joining us for a recruiting report that I'm sure is going to get dwarfed in a way by the reaction coming out from not so much of a Victory Monday here in Norman, Oklahoma, with the embarrassment that was on Saturday at the Cotton Bowl. All right, that's going to do it for George and Josh. I'm Eddie. We'll see you right back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel.